Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be kind of a long overdue book haul. I have had most of these books I think since early February or whenever I filmed my last book haul, and they've just been sitting around waiting for me to film and show you all. So I have quite a few, and a lot of these I picked up in sales that were like, buy two get the third free, or books were half off or more, whatever. And then I have a good amount, again, that I won in giveaways, so that's exciting. And then I have a couple of gifts from very thoughtful people, which was very nice of them. So I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do given the current situation. Obviously I like to buy books, but with Amazon kind of deprioritizing books, I feel like it's not a great idea to buy from them right now. I don't know if our local Barnes & Noble is doing the curbside pickup thing, so I might check that out. I think there's a couple of local bookstores that are definitely doing curbside pickup, so I feel like that could be a good way for me to, support my local businesses and also buy more books if I feel the need, which, honestly, I probably should just read what I have, but such is the life of a book buying person, I guess. Anyway, so I think let us start with books that I have received for review or for gifts or whatever. So I think let's start with the very first book here, which is Leaping Wolf by J.P. Harker. So I have actually read this and really enjoyed it, so you can already see my review up on Goodreads, but obviously I'll talk about it in my end of the month wrap up for March. This is the sequel to Wildcat, which I read I think in January as a buddy read with Kat from Brews and Reviews. But we both really enjoyed it and wanted to continue on in the story and see what happens, so obviously the author was so kind enough to send me the second book as well. If you don't remember, Wildcat was a historical fantasy that's kind of based on Romans and Celts. So Leaping Wolf picks up after the events of the first book, and I'm going to try to be a little vague as to not spoil things, but we're basically dealing with these tribes that make up this Caledon group, and there's, a lot of them are not really necessarily happy with decisions that have been made, I guess, and so we're kind of dealing with fallout from that, and we get to learn more about the tribes that make up the Caledon, and there's an elite warrior group, the Gadarim, I think is how you pronounce it, but we get to learn more about them too, and it was just a really fantastic sequel that I definitely recommend. Obviously, read Wildcat first so you know what's going on, but this is a really fun historical fantasy series, and I'll tell you more about my thoughts in my end of the month wrap up, but I just wanted to mention it here because the author did very kindly send me this for review. So then I was sent a couple of gifts from my Amazon wish list, which I was very grateful for. So the first one that I'll talk about is The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. So Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads sent me this, which thank you so much. I'll leave her channel link down below so you can all check her out, but this is supposed to be a really great historical romance from what I've heard. One of our main characters watches her ex-lover's sham of a wedding and kind of wants to be anywhere else. She gets a letter from a noblewoman asking her to translate a groundbreaking French astronomy text, so she goes there, I guess. I think they end up developing feelings for one another, but I've heard that this is just a very heartwarming tale, and it's a cute little romance, so I think this would be actually quite perfect for the current situation. I've been kind of going for lighter reads, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to pick this up soon. The next book I will talk about that I was sent as a gift is Falling Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes. So Jay Lee, thank you, I very much appreciate this. I've heard it pitched as a YA Game of Thrones. I don't know how accurate that actually is, but basically we have, I think, 3 characters. We've got a princess, a king's son, so I'm not sure if he's a prince or a bastard or son or what, and then we have some sort of rebel who's leading a revolution. It's witches if found are put to death, and watchers, immortal beings who take the shape of hawks to visit the human world, have been almost entirely forgotten. Then we have a power struggle, 4 people kind of, I guess, coming up against each other, and then there's some sort of maybe elemental magic. But I've been interested in this book for a while, especially, I am hoping it's kind of a Game of Thrones-esque saga. I think there's several books out as well as a spin-off series that may or may not have like portal magic involved. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, I'm excited to see how this is. So then I think let's get into some of the giveaways that I've won, and there's quite a few of them again. So the first one that I'll talk about, I won in a Twitter giveaway from Tor, so thank you very much. But this is Unconquerable Sun by Kate Elliott, so this comes out in July this year. And this is pitched as a gender-swapped Alexander the Great on an interstellar scale. Take the brilliance and cutting courage of Princess Leia, add in a dazzling futuristic setting where pop culture and propaganda are one and the same, and hold on tight. So I'm very excited for this. I was super excited to hear that I had won, so, you know, that was great. But I really like the pitch of a gender-swapped Alexander the Great. That kind of makes me think that we're going to have, like, epic space battles, and also just comparing with Princess Leia, that's, you know, fantastic. But I guess more importantly, I'm pretty sure that I'll like this because I've read several of Kate Elliott's other books before and enjoyed them, so I'm very excited. I think she has mostly written fantasy books, or at least the ones that I've read of hers have been fantasy books, so I'm excited to see how she does with sci-fi as well. So now we get into the various Goodreads giveaways that I've won. The first one I will talk about is To Catch an Earl by Kate Bateman. And can we admire that cover? That's pretty great. So this is, I think, a Regency romance. I don't think I've really read much Regency romances before, so I'm excited to see how this goes. But basically, it's like a case of secret identities finds reunited lovers on opposite sides of the law in this fun, flirty Regency romance. So we have an Earl who has been asked to pursue the Nightjar, who's a notorious thief who is like stealing France's crown jewels, and he meets our main character Emmy, who I think is probably, oh yeah, she is straight up the Nightjar thief. So I think this sounds really fun, you know, having her be a thief. You know, I'm sure he's going to find out about her being the thief, and we're going to have like drama involved in that, but that sounds really fun. I think this may be I could be making this up. I thought this was like the second book in the series, but this comes out in June of this year. The next book I will talk about is Lobizona by Romina Garber. I was very excited to see that I had won this because I think it's going to be one of the like bigger releases this year. So this comes out in May. So I think we've got our main character who is 16 years old, and she's apparently on the run from her Florida home, chased by her father's Argentine crime family and at risk for being deported. So she goes from Miami to a secret world buried within our own, which is full of like Argentinian folklore where witches and werewolves come alive at the full moon. So I think this is going to be really interesting. I have heard it kind of described as magical realism, which makes me a little nervous because I typically don't enjoy those types of books as much, but I'm hoping this maybe leans more towards urban fantasy because obviously we're in Florida and we've got very supernatural creatures. I think it's interesting to kind of like tackle these bigger topics like undocumented people in the US, and I really appreciate the inclusion of folklore, and you know, like I've mentioned this before on my channel, but I really like reading about other countries like folklore and myths and everything like that, and I don't really know much about Argentinian folklore, so this will be really cool to read. I'm very excited for it, and I hope it's good. The next book I'll talk about is The World Beneath Their Feet, Mountaineering, Madness, and the Deadly Race to Summit the Himalayas by Scott Ellsworth. So I was actually really excited that this was a finished copy. That was very surprising. But this is basically like, I think, a history of people hiking the Himalayas. And it's, you know, it's like talking about in the 1930s how various mountaineers from different countries are all competing to climb Mount Everest and K2. So this is like kind of goes into climbing and mountain climbers in general, but also just like, I think the history behind all of these mountaineers and like how they were able to climb the Himalayas. But yeah, so I am very interested in this topic. I had actually in undergrad taken a course on like, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it was basically like cardiac physiology. And we had watched a like short video or something about people climbing Mount Everest and just like the various changes that your body goes through as you like climb up, because obviously there's like the elevation, you know, just extreme like strenuous exercise and just the lack of oxygen and everything like that. It's really interesting. So, you know, I've been kind of interested in this topic, and I was really excited that I won this copy. So hopefully it'll be good. The next book I'll talk about is The Ancestor by Danielle Trussoni. So this was also a finished copy, so I was, you know, super excited about that. But this, I think, our main character, Alberta, receives a letter addressed to her as, like, you know, Countess Alberta Montbianco, and it says that she has inherited a noble title and a castle in Italy, so she's kind of like skeptical about this, you know, and so she's like, okay, but, you know, I'll check it out. She has a stressful life in New York, and she, like, you know, the chance to go to Italy on perhaps a vacation and like check this whole situation out is kind of exciting. At first, her inheritance seems like a dream come true, so you've got like champagne on a private jet, that she's got like artwork, jewels left to her, and that this like castle is really fancy. But it's like her ancestry has a dark side, and she learns that her family history is full of secrets. Her true inheritance lies not in the legacy of ancestral treasures, but in her very genes. So this is like a gothic novel of suspense and dark family secrets. So that sounds really cool. The next book I'll talk about is Behind the Red Door by Megan Collins. So this is, I think, a thriller, and it's like, how well do you trust your memories? So our main character sees the news about somebody who is a 34-year-old missing woman from Maine, and she thinks that she knows this woman. So it's like our main character's husband is sure it's because of this, like, you know, woman's famous kidnapping and famous return 20 years ago, and it's like, but our main character has no memory of that, even though it was like really close nearby. Our main character starts having nightmares about this woman who was kidnapped, and kind of gets to wondering if that, like, you know, it's not really a dream, but actually a memory. I think she goes back to her childhood home and buys a copy of this woman's like autobiography, which may have provoked her original kidnapper to abduct her again. And basically, she's got some sort of connection to this woman. So that sounds like a really interesting thriller. I've never read anything by this author before, I think, so I'm excited to see how this goes. You know, I'm always in the mood for a good thriller. That sounds kind of creepy, for sure. So this comes out in August this year. The next book I'll talk about is The Swap by Robyn Harding. So this comes out, let's see, in June this year. This is supposedly a riveting tale about the toxic relationship between two couples after a night of sexual shenanigans and the manipulative teenager with an explosive secret at the center of it all. So we've got a teenager who, like, kind of doesn't fit in, and like she signs up for a pottery class, I think, at a local studio, and is run by this woman who is once like a famous social media person. Our teenager falls under this woman's spell, and then this woman is compelled to share her darkest secrets and deepest desires, and then I guess her husband comes in, and they're desperate for a baby, and they kind of exclude this teenager, I guess. And then it's like one night after a boozy dinner party, this pottery woman suggests swapping partners, and I think our teen is going to be full of resentment and like possibly make some like poor choices, perhaps. I'm not entirely sure, but that sounds quite interesting. I read, it was The Arrangement by her in the fall and really enjoyed it, so I'm hoping that I'll like this one as well. So the last of the giveaway books that I had won is How the Penguins Saved Veronica by Hazel Pryor. So I've never read anything by this author, but like, look at the cute little penguins. So this is on sale also in June. But this is supposedly a rich, heartwarming story about a curmudgeonly but charming old woman, her estranged grandson, and a colony of penguins that proves it's never too late to be the person you want to be. So this could be a good one to read right now as well. But we have our main character who is 85 and, you know, again, just kind of like estranged from her family and wants to find a worthy cause, I guess, to leave all of her money to. So she sees the documentary about penguins being studied in Antarctica, and she's like, yo, I'm gonna come there. Like, be prepared, scientists. I'm on my way. So she convinces the team of scientists to rescue an orphan baby penguin, and I guess, you know, everybody loves them because, like, why would you not? So then her grandson ends up coming to Antarctica as well to get to know his grandmother, and, you know, I think we're just going to have people learning about each other, and with the help of penguins, everybody is probably going to have a happy lovely ending, I guess. So I'm excited to read this. I think it looks really cute. So the next book I'll talk about is the book that came in the Adult Unplugged book box for March. And that is the Borgia Confessions by Alyssa Palombo. So I've never read, I think, anything about this author either, but we're going to Renaissance Italy, and I think this is a historical fiction. And so I think our main character is kind of, it's like deciding whether to become a pawn in the power games of the man she loves or stay for her own soul. I think this is just mostly a historical book that's dealing with all of like the politics and, you know, I don't know, ambitiousness of this particular family. So yeah, you know, I tend to not read as much historical fiction, but I'm excited to give this one a try, and you know, like hopefully I enjoy it. So now we get into like a lot of the books that I have bought, and again, I bought a lot of these, and like most of them are from like a buy two get the third free sale, but some of these are books that I got for like with coupons or that were just like really on sale. So, you know, saving money is always nice. But anyway, so I think the first book I'll talk about here is Naked in Death by J.D. Robb. So this is the first book in the In Death series, and I've heard Mara from Books Like Whoa talk about the series quite a bit, and she kind of like motivated me to actually pick these up. So we follow a New York homicide detective, and I think this is, yeah, it's like set in 2058, and technology completely rules the world. The senator's daughter is to end up killed, and I guess she had been leading a life of prostitution. So this high-profile case takes our main character, Eve, into, I think, you know, Washington politics and society, and then she is also attracted to Rourke, who is one of the wealthiest and most influential men on the planet, and, you know, obviously he's pretty attractive, but he's the leading suspect in the investigation. So I think these books are all kind of like investigations and mysteries, and I think there's sometimes some like paranormal elements involved, but I think maybe those are more in the novellas. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I'm excited to actually give this a shot. I always enjoy, you know, fun mystery books, so I'm hoping this will be good. The next book I'll talk about is Heart of Blood and Ashes by Milla Vane. So this is, I talked about this at some point, it might be in my February releases video, but this is kind of like a fantasy romance. So we have our barbarian king and queen are killed off in an act of bloody betrayal, and I think their son is one of our main characters and like, you know, the male love interest here, and is like trying to avenge his parents even if it costs him the crown. And he learns that I think the king's daughter was the one who caused his parents to die, and so he's like trying to seek revenge, but she's like the last in a line of legendary warrior queens, but she's like small and weak, and so she is, I think, uses her intelligence to get ahead in the world. And basically she proposes marriage to them because she wants vengeance against her father as well. So, you know, barbarian fantasy romance. What could go wrong? The next book I'll talk about is The Cruel Stars by John Birmingham. So this is some sort of space opera, I think. So we have the Sturm, who are a group claiming to be a master race of true humans who had been defeated and driven into dark space a while ago, but they have returned and have like brutally attacked people. Humanity is entrusting a few people, including a young insecure commander of the only surviving warship, a disgraced soldier who had been like condemned to death for treason, and then a princess, a pirate, and a 700-year-old hero. So that sounds fun. That sounds like a really great group of people. That's basically all I know about this, but I think it'll be like a fun space opera, and I tend to like these sort of like military sci-fi books, so I'm hoping that I will enjoy this one as well. The next book I'll talk about is The Bard's Blade by Brian D. Anderson. So this came out, I think, in January. But we have our main character, who is a renowned winemaker, and she is betrothed to a musician, and is like, you know, their destiny has never been in question. Whatever life brings, they will face it together. But we have a stranger coming into this land that, for the first time in centuries, because I guess this land has been magically sealed off from the rest of the world. And so this person brings a dark prophecy that forces our main character and her betrothed into different paths. And it's like, how far will they have to go to stop a rising darkness and save their home, and how much of themselves will they have to give up along the way? So I've heard that this is pretty good, and I think this was self-published before. I can't remember exactly, but I think this is supposed to be like kind of like a more lighthearted fantasy, which, you know, would possibly be a good fit for right now. The next book I'll talk about is The Last Son by Katie Edwards. So this has been on my list of books to read for like the longest time. So it was included in this buy two get a third free sale, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. This is the first in an urban fantasy series, and the author actually lives not too far away from me. We follow our main character, Rune St. John, who is the last child of a fallen sun court, and he is supposed to find Lady Justice's missing son on New Atlantis, which is the place where these Atlanteans moved after, I guess, the original Atlantis kind of was destroyed. He goes along with his bodyguard companion and like is questioning this missing person's relatives and business contacts, and it's like, yeah, he must navigate old friends and enemies and a growing attraction to a handsome nobleman. But as they investigate, they discover that there's some sort of legendary creature like that's kind of destroying the city. I think will find more than he was hired for. Clues to the fall of the Sun Court and the secrets of his own past. So yeah, that sounds awesome. I've been wanting to read this again for ages, and I think the second book has come out, and possibly the third one as well. So I could be making that up. The third one may come out this year. I don't entirely remember. The next book I'll talk about is The Last Days of Jack Sparks by Jason Arnopp. So I'm planning on buddy reading this with Rachel from The Shades of Orange in April, hopefully. It's no secret that journalist Jack Sparks had been researching the occult for his new book, and he has like triggered some sort of Twitter storm by mocking an exorcism that he witnessed. And it's like, then there was that video, 40 seconds of chilling footage that Jack repeatedly claimed was not of his own making, but it was posted from his own YouTube account. And then nobody knew what happened to Jack in the days that followed until now. So this sounds like a really cool horror book, and you know, I really like this whole connection, I guess, with YouTube and Twitter. You know, I guess, you know, now that I'm like participating in these forms of social media, I think it's really interesting to read about that in books. I'm hoping it'll be like a good mix of thriller and horror, and I think Rachel and I will have a good time reading this. So the next book I'll talk about is Caressed by Ice by Nalini Singh. So this is the third book in the Sly Changeling series, and like, let's admire this cover. It's pretty fantastic. So this, in this series, we generally have, you know, changelings, obviously, who are like these shapeshifters, and then the Psy, who have various like mind powers. Like, you know, there's some people who can predict the future. There's like telekinetic people. At least in the first two books, I think the women have both been Psy, and then the male love interests have been changelings. But I think in this one, we actually follow a male Psy character, and he is he has some sort of dark abilities, and he is a deadly assassin until he meets our shifter, who I think who was introduced in some of the previous books, and she had been abducted by a serial killer. I think that was in the first book. She's worried that she could become a killer herself, and it's like the dead body is found, and there's some sort of, it's a familiar madness. So obviously this is paranormal romance, so we can all guess that these characters are going to fall for each other, and you know, not unsurprisingly there, but yeah, I really enjoy these books. They're kind of a fun mix of like darker, like serial killer type plots with like the fun romance and like, you know, various magical abilities and shapeshifting and whatnot. So I'm excited to continue this series. The next book that I'll talk about is Friday Night Bites by Chloe Neal. So this is the second book in the Chicagoland Vampire series. Now, I read the first book, I think in November, and really enjoyed it, so I'm excited to continue the series. But basically, in the first book, our main character, Merritt, was a graduate student, and she ends up being attacked by vampires and kind of like turned against her will, and then she kind of ends up having to be like, you know, do I choose to fully embrace this vampire life, or, you know, try to live my normal life? There are these mass feeding parties where vampires round up humans like cattle and drink themselves silly, so that's obviously not great, and the humans are not going to like this. So the master vampire of this house that she's involved with wants her to kind of like reconnect with her upper class family and work with other supernaturals to keep the more unsavory aspects of the vampire lifestyle out of the media. But somebody doesn't want peace between humans and vampires, and there's some sort of grudge, so obviously they're probably going to try to like expose all of these like, dirty secrets and terrible things, I guess, to the public. But yeah, while the first book definitely had kind of a bit of like the chosen one trope, I really enjoyed it and thought it was just really fun. And obviously, like, I enjoyed that Merritt was a graduate student, since I am one as well. The next book that I'll talk about is The Harp of Kings by Juliet Marillier. So I have been wanting to read this. This came out, I think, in like September or October, so I've been wanting to read it since then and just haven't gotten a copy until it was part of this like buy two get the third free sale. But we have I think a set of twins, and they're both musicians. Our female twin, I think, wants to join an elite warrior band, so she and her brother end up going there to compete for places on the force and find themselves joining a mission while still being candidates. So they go undercover as traveling minstrels. They're sent to recover this Harp of Kings, and it's, you know, an ancient symbol of kingship, obviously, so that has gone missing, and it's like, if the instrument is not played at the upcoming coronation, the heir will not be accepted, and the kingdom will be thrown into disarray. Juliet Marillier writes really great historical fantasy books, and I've basically loved everything that she's ever written, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to love it. The next book that I'll talk about is Only Ashes Remain by Rebecca Schaeffer. So this is the sequel to Not Even Bones. This is kind of like a YA dark urban fantasy sort of series where our main character, like, had been helping her mother to basically like chop up and sell body parts of various supernatural creatures, because there's this whole market for this. But things kind of like don't go well for her, and she ends up kind of being sold to this death market, and, you know, kind of has to try to escape and whatnot. So our main character herself does have some supernatural abilities. So obviously in this book, I'm going to try to be vague so I don't spoil things that happen in the first book, but she's still kind of being targeted for her abilities. So she's basically like trying to take revenge on the person who sold her to these kidnappers and like show that she is, you know, like too tough to fight against, basically. Our main character is pretty like morally gray. She kind of struggles, I think, with what's right and wrong. So then I have a whole chunk of books here. So we have, let's see, Veiled, Burned, Bound, Marked, and Fallen. Sorry, that's Fallen. All by Benedict Jacka. So these are books 6 through 10 of the Alex Verus series, and obviously these were also part of the buy two get the third free sale. And I was like, I mean, yeah, like mass market paperbacks don't go on sale often, so I'm gonna get those. And I have really enjoyed all the books that I've read so far, so I like feel very confident that I'm going to continue to enjoy them. But basically, you know, the premise here with the series, it's an urban fantasy series that I think fans of the Dresden Files would really enjoy, where our main character Alex is a diviner, so he like sees, you know, various probabilities of future events and like can kind of predict the future. Book 6, I think, is going to be dealing with Alex's former master a lot, and I think I'm going to kind of keep these vague because they are books 6 through 10. He has to form kind of an uneasy alliance, and, you know, he's trying to kind of go into like legitimate work, but like, you know, things don't go well. So we'll just leave it at that. So I think I'm going to actually not talk about the plots for books 7 through 10, so I don't like actually spoil them for myself either. The next book I'll talk about is The Wrong Stars by Tim Pratt. So I think I heard about this series either from Rachel from the Shades of Orange or possibly Scott from Book Invasion, or maybe both, I don't remember. But anyway, so this is a sci-fi series where we have the crew of a ship that are kind of like salvagers, and they discover the wreck of this old exploration vessel just like floating light years away from its intended destination. The only occupant left on this ship has been in cryosleep, and they revive her. And it's like they have to break it to her that in the many years that she's been in stasis, humanity has already met and made an alliance with the alien race, because I guess that was their mission, to make contact with the first aliens, I guess. And then as like she reveals that these are very different extraterrestrials, and the gifts that they bestowed on her could kill all of humanity or take the human race out to the most distant stars. So I think this is a trilogy, possibly, and I think this is hopefully going to be the type of sci-fi that I really enjoy. The next book that I'll talk about is Embers of War by Gareth L. Powell. So this is also one that I can't remember if I've heard from Rachel and or Scott. We have a sentient warship that was built for violence, and she is disgusted by her role in a genocide, I guess. So she's stripped of her weaponry and like kind of wants to return, and she joins like, I guess, an organization dedicated to rescuing ships in distress. And a civilian ship goes missing, so she and her crew are sent on a rescue mission. Some intelligence officer is tasked with locating a poet who was aboard this spaceship, I guess, that they're trying to find. This poet is not the person she appears to be, and it's like, you know, rescue turns into something more dangerous, and there's conflict for the entire galaxy. So, yeah, this sounds really cool. I think this is, again, going to be more towards, like, the military sci-fi, which I typically do enjoy. So the next book that I'll talk about is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. So I think I had talked about this in my February releases video. So our main character is a princess of an island kingdom, and she's been training to be this master of souls. And it's like the rest of the realm can choose their magic, but it's never really been a choice for her, and so she has to prove that she's a master of this soul magic. And, you know, things don't go well, I think, when she's trying to demonstrate her abilities, and she has to flee, so she ends up kind of making a deal with a pirate, and she's like, if you help prove that I can rule, I will help you get your stolen magic back. And then, you know, I think they're going to be sailing around a bit. So this sounds like a fun nautical fantasy, and I have heard really great things about it. Also, you know, like, what a cool cover. I had also seen on Twitter that the author had written this while listening to, oh God, what was it? It was like, I know the Witcher 3 soundtrack was there, and then I think there was like some Final Fantasy and Skyrim or something like that. And so like I saw that and kind of like interacted with her a little bit, and I was like, those were some really great choices of soundtracks. I also like to listen to the Witcher 3 soundtrack and Skyrim while I work. So that kind of like, I don't know, made me even more excited to pick this up. So yeah. The next book that I'll talk about is The Last Odyssey by James Rowland. So this just recently came out, and I did have this on pre-order, so, you know, it still arrived on time, which I was actually, quite frankly, a little shocked about, since it was this week. But anyway, so this is the most recent book in the Sigma Force series, which I've talked about before on my channel, and I really enjoy, but this is like a fun action-adventure series, and this particular one, it deals with Greenland's researchers find a medieval ship buried half a mile below the ice. They find like a priceless treasure in the ship that's, you know, kind of like a magical map, I think, and it's like it traces the path of Odysseus' famous ship as it sails away from Troy. The map opens to reveal a fiery river leading to the hidden realm of Tartarus underneath the Mediterranean Sea. Tartarus holds like a whole bunch of really, I think, powered up weapons that everybody wants, and, you know, it's like the horrors found in Homer's tales are all too real and could be unleashed upon the world. So I'm really excited for this. This is just a series that I've really enjoyed, and I like how it's a fun blend of like science and history. The next book that I'll talk about is Smoke Bitten by Patricia Briggs. So this is also one that I had in pre-order, and it arrived, I think, a couple days after it came out, which was like last week, but you know, that's totally fine. But this is the latest book in the Mercy Thompson series, which is an urban fantasy series where our main character Mercy is a coyote shapeshifter. And this, I think, is set, I think they're up in the Tri-Cities area in Washington. But anyway, so it deals a lot with werewolves, and the more recent books have been dealing with the Fae. So this particular one, it's like, you know, the Fae dwelt in Underhill a while ago until Underhill like kind of kicked them out, and so the Fae had to abandon all of their treasure and their castles, and they abandoned their prisoners and pets. So basically, like, the worst have been left here. And one of these prisoners has somehow managed to escape Underhill, and it can shapeshift to look like anybody or anything, and it's like if it bites you, it controls you. It lives for chaos and destruction. It can make you do anything, even kill the person you love the most. So Mercy is obviously going to have to fight this threat, but I'm very excited for this. I have loved this series, so, you know, I'm very confident that I'll love this one as well. The next book that I'll talk about is The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. So this is a murder mystery. It's like a New Year's reunion in the remote Scottish wilderness. We have the beautiful one, the golden couple, the volatile one, the new parents, the quiet one, the city boy, the outsider. One of these friends is the murderer, and one won't make it out alive. So, you know, that's probably all I need to know. It's going to be like a closed circle murder mystery set in, you know, like the Scottish wilderness, and we've got a lot of snow on the cover, so I think it'll be like sort of a wintry setting, I assume. But I've heard pretty good things about this, and she just came out with the guest list, which also seems to be like a closed circle murder mystery, which, you know, I'm hoping that I'll enjoy this so I can pick that one up as well, since I do enjoy these closed circle murder mysteries. The next book that I'll talk about is The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. So this was kind of like a random buy, because Barnes & Noble had these like buy one get one half off, and I really wanted this one, and I was like, okay, sure, I'll go ahead and pick this one up as well. But this is a romance of some sort, where it's like our wedding planner has been left at an altar. She ends up being offered some sort of opportunity that can change her life, but it's like she has to collaborate with the best, or perhaps worst, man from her own failed wedding. He's a marketing expert and trying to like expand the brand of some hotel. He's going to be working with his brother's ex-fiance, and she hates them, but obviously they have to work together. And I think I mean, I assume this is a romance, so I assume that there's going to be like enemies to lovers. I've heard pretty good things about it, and it seems like a fun read, so I went ahead and picked it up. The next book I'll talk about is my favorite Half Night Stand by Christina Lauren. So this was just like on sale in like the bargain bin clearance section, so I was like, okay, sure. I've read several of their books before and enjoyed them. This one I think doesn't tend to get as positive reviews, but you know, we'll see. So this is kind of about, I think, like modern dating mostly. So we follow our main character who's like, has always been one of the guys, and she's a UC Santa Barbara professor and hangs out with her 4 best guy friends and is perma-single, and then I guess she and her friends make a pact that they're going to join an online dating service in order to find people to bring to this black tie gala at the university. After making this pact, she and one of the guys, I think, in her group kind of like spend the night together, but then they decide that they should be friends, and then, you know, online dating doesn't tend to go well. She has to face her worst fear, intimacy, or risk losing her best friend. The next book that I'll talk about is Undercover Bromance by Alyssa K. Adams. So this is the sequel to the Bromance Book Club, and this one follows the sister of the main female character from the first book. She is working as a sous chef at this fancy restaurant, and the celebrity chef owner is kind of a dick and, you know, harasses the young hostess. So our main character in this book confronts him and gets fired, and so she wants revenge, and she has to turn to one of the guys who's part of this romance book club, and I think the book club themselves are reading like a romantic suspense novel, so I think they're trying to use techniques from these novels to like get revenge on this our main character's boss, and then obviously, you know, it's a romance. But I'm really excited to read this. The Bromance Book Club was quite funny, though. Like, you know, like I mentioned this, it was a little stressful for me with some of the tropes, you know, like this marriage in peril trope, so I'm excited to see how this one goes, since it does follow a different couple. Right, we finally made it to the last book, which is this gigantic chunky book, and that is The Light of All That Falls by James Islington. So this is the 3rd book in the Lycanius trilogy, and I've mentioned this, I think I mentioned this when it came out in December. This is a high fantasy series that's quite good. I don't entirely remember what happened in books 1 and 2, so hopefully, you know, like I'm making you read a little recap here before I read this one. But basically here we have 3 sort of main characters, I think. We've got someone trying to maintain an alliance between various factions of power in this country. We've got one of our characters is imprisoned, is trying to struggle with his future. And then we have one of our other characters who's like kind of dealing with plans that he has made. That is incredibly vague. So I seem to remember in the first book, there was this like group of people, I think prior to the events of the first book, there was this group of people who had like these really strong magical abilities, but people like didn't really love that, so they kind of like killed off a lot of them. And then there's like, so that was kind of like higher magic, and then like below that, I guess there's like magical abilities that are like acceptable, but they have to be like highly controlled, so they're put in this like school setting, and you know, like their magical abilities are strictly under control. One of the main characters has these magical abilities of these really powerful beings that they have been killed off. It's like to the north, an ancient enemy defeated begins to stir, and then we've got like a young man whose fate intertwines with our main character, or one of the main characters, who wakes up in a forest with like no memory of who he is. Obviously, that's sort of like a kind of vague description, and you know, my description of The Light of All That Falls was like pretty vague and terrible, but yeah, I'm really excited to actually like finish out this series. It's been a bit, and you know, like I'm great at starting series, but I'm not great at finishing them, I guess. So I'm excited to actually like check one off there. So with that, those were a lot of books, and like I said, I've kind of like accumulated a lot of these mostly in the month of February, a little bit into March with various coupons. I've also won like a surprising number of giveaways again, so yay, that was very exciting. Thank you, publishers. And thank you to Jay Lee and Stephanie again for sending me those 2 books. That was very kind of you. Like I said, I don't know what I'm going to do moving forward, just with the current situation in terms of like accumulating more books. I have bought some books on Kindle since those have gone on sale, so I guess I could actually talk about those, because half the time I like forget what I have on Kindle. Anyway, or perhaps I'll just, you know, only buy through my local bookstore or Barnes & Noble if it has that curbside pickup option available. But let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. For your question of the day, what are you doing about buying books in this, given the current situation. I am actually like really curious to hear what everybody's doing, just because, you know, I feel kind of bad placing online orders because, you know, obviously that requires like people who work in these fulfillment centers to be together, which is obviously not ideal given how the disease spreads, but at the same time, like, you know, going into the stores is also not great because you're contacting people. I don't know. I feel like there's really no good solution to this. But anyway, that's kind of me just like rambling here. So I hope you're having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.